Come on, Bobby. How come I always have to do it? I could hear the way Bobby was pressing the pause button on his NES controller. It made that click sound somewhere between a crack and an annoyed sigh. That click told me Bobby was on the edge of patience, about to swap whining for shouting. Lately, he'd been trying to be more patient. He was dating this girl who was all about good Christian values and kindness. Bobby was really trying to follow her example, but I guess I had a knack for pushing his buttons. Because, oh brother of mine, you need to toughen up, or this world is going to eat you alive. My heart skipped a beat at the thought. The idea of being eaten alive was exactly why I was so scared to go downstairs and do what needed to be done. Bobby laughed. Not literally, kiddo. I mean, like, if kids at school find out my 12-year-old brother is still afraid of the dark, they'll never let him live it down. He'd be a social outcast, unwelcome anywhere. That's why I leave the job of turning off all the lights to you. I looked at the open door, feeling like I could already sense the eyes of whatever hunted me, and I despaired. The house we lived in had been my mom's childhood home. She had lived here with her 2 older sisters until she followed our dad when he joined the Navy, a year before Bobby was born. When Grandma died suddenly 6 months after Dad's motorcycle accident, she left the house to whichever daughter wanted it. My aunts had their own places, so this 2-story house, free and clear, seemed like a dream. That first night alone, with Mom working late most nights, she told us all the lights had to be off downstairs before bed. I won't have my power bill through the roof because you guys are lighting up the whole neighborhood. Since that night, I'd been assigned the task of turning off the lights before bed. Bobby had quickly taken over this chore because A, he was the oldest, and B, Mom worked 5 to 6 nights a week to pay the bills and taxes. So on most nights it was just the 2 of us, and Bobby was in charge. Naturally, he handed me the chores he didn't want, including turning off the lights. Come on, Bobby, I tried again, but he wouldn't budge. Don't start, kid. You need to get over this, and the only way to do it is to do it. Know what I mean? I didn't, but I nodded anyway. I took the stairs slowly, feeling like a frail old man, and watched as the downstairs came closer with each step. I switched off the light beside the stairs and began my routine. The lights had to be turned off in a specific order. If I didn't start with the stair lights and end with the basement lights, they'd all come back on. Neither of us understood why, but I'd attributed it to the thing that lived in the dark after the lights went out. I'd named it Mr. V for some random reason, and even I didn't know why. I just needed a name, and that one seemed as good as any. Bobby thought it was just faulty wiring and insisted that if I wanted to get the job done, I had to follow this order. Leaving the stair lights on was allowed. In fact, it was advised so I could find my way back. Sometimes it was the only way to navigate the darkness, and I'd used that light as a beacon more than once. I went into the foyer, turned off the lights, then moved to the mudroom and turned off those lights too. But I left the porch light on so Mom could find the lock when she got home. Mr. V didn't seem to care about the porch light, which was good because he could get pretty temperamental. In the beginning, Bobby would come with me. As long as he was there, nothing ever seemed to happen. We'd walk through the rooms and then casually head back to the stairs and up to our rooms. Whatever Mr. V was, he didn't bother with older kids. Or maybe it was just kids who didn't believe in him. I didn't know, but things were always different when I was alone. I turned off the dining room lights slowly, finishing with the switch by the door so I could turn my back on the room and walk out. It felt like part of the game, making it better if whatever it was didn't see me seeing it. Sometimes the dining room was empty when I turned off the light, but other times I'd catch a glimpse of a figure standing in the dark space when I was done. Sometimes it was by the head of the table, sometimes by the window, but it was always watching me. It was never right in front of me, like in the horror movies Bobby and I watched when Mom worked late. It was always further away than I'd like. As I walked toward the living room, I could almost feel Mr. V's eyes on my neck, and it made me shudder. I glanced at the leather couch Mom had brought from the apartment, her only addition to Grandma's furniture, and felt a pang of guilt seeing the scratches on it. It wasn't entirely my fault, but I had caused it. The pastor at church said people needed to take responsibility for their actions, and I was man enough to admit this was on me. I had broken the rules and had to pay the price. It had all started subtly. I'd notice little things once the lights went out and make a mental note of them. The shadow man was one Mr. V, as I called him. Then there were the shadows that twisted and stretched oddly when the lights were off. The downstairs looked puffy and unreal in the dark, swelling or shrinking depending on its mood. I wasn't really afraid of Mr. V. I still didn't quite believe in him. But I was afraid of the dark, and that made it easy to think that anything could be living in it, even Mr. V. I'd spent weeks rushing up the stairs, fleeing from the kitchen to the living room. I'd never felt anything grab me or claw at my shirt, but it always felt close. The week before had been especially bad. I felt an overwhelming sense of dread in the dark rooms, which even seeped into my dreams. Sometimes I'd run through endless corridors, being chased by the shadow man. It was strange to be on the cusp of 11 and feel like I might break down, but I was getting close. I'd tried explaining it to Mom, but she just said Bobby was in charge and seemed to be trying to help me. Bobby was relentless about helping me overcome my fear of the dark, warning me how the other kids would pick on me if they knew, how I'd have no friends, and that only added to my anxiety. That night, when I came downstairs, Bobby was already asleep. I really didn't want to turn off the lights alone. I turned off the foyer lights with a shaky hand, then saw Mr. V lurking by the front door. My legs began to shake. He was staring at me with his non-existent eyes, and I realized I was backing up, making my way towards the stairs. When I dashed up them, I closed my room door and locked the knob. I climbed into bed, covering myself, and closed my eyes tight as I heard something terrible happening downstairs, crashing, bashing, furniture being turned over, all because I was too scared to turn off the lights. Mom woke us up when she got home, yelling for us to get downstairs. I'd suspected what we'd find. "What the hell did you guys do? All the lights are on. The house is destroyed. I want some answers." As we looked over the mess, it was clear she was right. Neither of us had a good explanation, so Mom made us clean up before bed. The house looked like a tornado had hit it, books off shelves, the couch ripped and cut, the end table overturned. Bobby cornered me after Mom went to bed, asking why I had trashed the house. I hadn't been awake to hear the destruction, but I knew I hadn't done it, and Bobby hadn't either. Unless Mom had come home early and wrecked the house, it had to be Mr. V. Since then, I'd been more diligent about turning off the lights. As long as I pretended not to see Mr. V, he never bothered me. I shut off the lights in the living room, the mended/lost in the dark, and headed for the kitchen. The dishes were drying, the sink gleaming from Bobby's cleaning, and the chairs pushed in around the table. I turned to look, marking my escape route, and shuddered as I saw the dark head peeking out from the door to the den. It was waiting for me to turn off the lights. My hand shook as my finger hovered over the switch, and I hoped I had the strength to do it again. I pulled the switch down and immediately took off. I heard something coming out of the den, but I was already running through the living room. I bumped something with my hip as I passed the couch, slowing me a bit as I made for the stairs. It wasn't the first time I'd bumped something, but it wasn't the pain that slowed me. The side of the china cabinet felt like Play-Doh, soft and unreal. It only reminded me that once the lights were out, the downstairs was a different place. When the lights were on, this was where Bobby and I sat and watched cartoons or MTV after school. When the lights were on, this was where Mom and I sat on the couch on Sundays to watch Lifetime. When the lights were off, it was something else entirely, a place I couldn't control. I could see the stairs, the light casting long fingers into the dark. As I got close, my greatest fear came true. Until then, I could tell myself it was all in my head. I could make up excuses for my fear when I was safe in bed and Mr. V was downstairs. But as something grabbed my leg, I knew those excuses were nothing but a flimsy shield. The grip on my leg wasn't a hole or a stray toy. The hold was iron, the claws sharp. When I turned back to look, I wished I hadn't. The sight of that pitch-black face shifting in the dimness of the living room was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. The mouth was full of gnashing teeth, the eyes were spiral circles like a child's scribble, and I screamed in terror as I kicked at it with my free leg. The first kick hit between the eyes, the second made it loosen its grip, and the third finally let me yank my leg free. I felt the claws scratch my flesh, leaving 4 long marks, but I didn't care. I scrambled up the stairs on all fours. When I reached the top and looked down, I saw the thing sitting at the bottom of the stairs, watching me. It didn't seem to care that it hadn't caught me, didn't care that I had escaped. The look in its black eyes told me that, eventually, it would get me. Tomorrow was another day. What happened? I turned, cowering as a new figure emerged from the dark hallway. I screamed again, sure I was about to die, and almost cried when I heard the familiar voice. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Bobby asked. I tried to explain, but I couldn't find the words for what I'd experienced. It remained one of the scariest moments of my life.